on 3FM 92.7, also live on Facebook. It's 3FM 927 on Facebook and across all social media platforms. We're also live on our various affiliates across the country. Coming up in the next 1 hour on Hot Edition, 30 years of Ghana's parliamentary democracy marked today, but has the legislative arm of government lived up to the hopes and aspirations of the ordinary Ghanaian 3 decades after it came into being? We have a conversation on that here on Hot Edition. We assess the impact this evening. In the next 1 hour, also, there are calls from within the House of Parliament for more powers to be afforded the second arm of government to effectively police the executive. The Majority Leader Oseche Mensah Bonsu has been talking about this. We'll give you details of that shortly here on Hot Edition. Stay with us. Ghanaians also take delivery over 100,000 metric tons of petrol and diesel under the Gold for Oil program. We'll assess how that would impact prices at the pumps, which is the most important consideration in this Gold for Oil program, according to the National Petroleum Authority. Stay with us here on Hot Edition, whether indeed we can rely on this policy to achieve that ultimate objective of reducing prices of petrol and diesel at the pump. Stay with us. We have business, sports, and entertainment coming up in the next 60 minutes here on Hot Edition. I am Alfred Ocansey. Welcome. Let's get into the details now. It's been 3 decades of Ghana's parliament already. Now, the second arm of government today launched 30 years of existence with activities slated for the year to celebrate the legislative arm of government, primarily responsible for passing laws and keeping the executive arm in government on check. As we understand, Ghana's parliament has been a hotbed of controversy in some parts and conversations, on the other hand, as to whether the true benefits have been realized. And that's exactly what the Ghanaian people have been talking about over the period, the impact of parliament and whether we have been able to, as a people, realize the benefits. Shortly, we'll hear from the leadership of parliament as they launch the 30-year celebration. But here is my colleague Evelyn Tengman's report assessing the legislative arm of government 3 decades on and the impact that this has had on the people, especially the Ghanaian people, and whether this description of parliament being a rubber stamp has been erased, or we're still living in that period of this rubber stamp parliament and the influence of parliament in our democracy.
On January 7, 1993, the first parliament under the Fourth Republic with 200 members was constituted. Ghana's legislature is unique due to its hybrid nature, which is a combination of the British parliamentary and American presidential systems. The country's parliament over the years has served as one of the most studied in Africa and in the world. Under 7 speakers so far, the House has since beginning of the Fourth Republic passed more than 1,000 bills into law. The number of female members have also shot up from 16 in 1993 to 40 in 2021. Total membership has also increased from 200 to 275. For governance expert Professor Bafo Ajimandia, the practice of parliamentary democracy since the turn of the Fourth Republic has improved.
Overall, we can be happy with the work of Parliament as being one of the 3 legs of governance that has functioned relatively, in the sense that it's part of the success story of Ghana clocking 30 years without any interruption. So certainly Parliament deserves some kind of commendation for that.
But not for political scientist Professor Ransford Jampo.
Generally, if you ask me to score Parliament and the role that they have played over the last 30 years, I'll give them 3/10. The hung parliament has also been deficient in serving as a countervailing authority to the powers of the executive arm of government. They have this tendency of coming out loudly to whet the appetite of Ghanaians and to say a whole lot of things that we are going to do X, these nominees, we are not going to approve them. This budget we will not approve. When it gets to the time that really matters, then they will behave contrary to the expectations that they may have created among Ghanaians.
The two professors noted Parliament has been deficient in its representation role.
Representation has been the weakest link in the work of Parliament, in the sense that we do not observe close interactions between parliamentarians and their constituents. One thing about our democracy is that the parties are very strong. In fact, recently, when a party issued a statement publicly directing its members in Parliament to behave in a certain way, I was disturbed, because Parliament is an independent institution, and therefore we should not see outside bodies giving directives to parliamentarians.
It projected the interests of very selfish political parties, over the interest of constituencies. That's the reason why anytime there is going to be an election to determine who must represent a constituency in Parliament, among parliamentarians who have not served the interests of their constituents very well, you would see that other members of Parliament would visit the constituency of this parliamentarian who has not served the interests of his constituents very well, and they will go and plead, they will go and beg.
That's Professor Ransford Jampo. He's a professor of political science at the University of Ghana, Legon, and there he's been very emphatic about his call of Parliament in terms of their oversight role. He says, even with this 8th Parliament, which has been described as a hung Parliament, with both the NDC and the NPP having equal powers, except for the independent candidate for the Formena constituency who has declared his support in doing business with the NPP in the House, giving them that majority in terms of numbers. He says that they haven't done well when it comes to the oversight role of Parliament, scoring them 3/10. That's a fail. It's a failure in terms of the scoring of any performance of the arm of government. But for Minority Leader Dr. Kesla Toforsen, the majority side of Parliament must not shun their oversight responsibility as well. It should not be just for the minority to be checking the executive. He says both sides must do so.
We are elected to represent our people, and we cannot fail them in that regard. Mr. Speaker, whereas Parliament is an institution, performs legislative, financial, legislative, deliberative, representational, and oversight roles. Such much more is expected from the minority group in Parliament, beyond the requirement that the minority proves to the people that they are trusted alternative to the government of the day. It seems the oversight role of Parliament is reserved to the minority. It is the members of Parliament from the minority side that often questions the acts and omissions of the government of the day. It is the same members of Parliament from the minority side that raises critical issues, demand answers, and hold the government accountable. This is certainly a big task for members of Parliament on the minority side. The minority therefore requires the assistance and the cooperation of the civil society organizations, the academia, professional bodies, trade unions, students, and indeed each and every Ghanaian to enable it to hold the government accountable.
That's Dr. Kesla Toforsen, Minority Leader in Parliament, talking about the oversight role. Let's go on to the telephone now. Professor David Abdullahi is a Senior Governance Advisor at the African Parliamentary Network and is connecting with us. Professor Abdullahi, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. Appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, would you agree with the likes of Professor Jampo that when it comes to the assessment of the oversight role of Parliament hasn't acted to to the aspirations and expectations of the people, even with this 8th Parliament, Professor Abdullahi?
Yes. First, let me wish the Parliament of Ghana many more happy returns. We hope that as our democracy continues to mature, some of these things can come to the fore. I do agree with Atu Forsen, but my, assessment of Ghana Parliament is a mixed bag. Obviously, we can say it has chalked some achievements, and obviously there are some challenges. Now, if you would allow me, I'll just mention a few of the achievements, because it is not all bad. First, the Parliament has increased its membership from 200 to 230 to the current 275. That's an achievement. There's been smooth, peaceful transfer of power between the two parties, which is a sign of maturity of our democracy. We have competitive elections to elect our parliamentarians. The hang parliament in itself, in my opinion, and on one of your shows, I have mentioned that it's a plus to the growth of our democracy. It is making sure that at least some people sit up. And being able to elect the Speaker of Parliament from the opposition party in Parliament is also another achievement. Of course, Ghana's Parliament has been adjudged as the best open Parliament in Africa. These are some of them. And they pass a lot of bills, and it is helping with our democracy. Now, where I do agree with Dr. Atu Forsen is because the Parliament of Ghana is too partisan, where most parliamentarians actually are more of not voting with their conscience and convictions, but voting on party lines, whether they agree with something or not, and they are not holding the executive responsible. There should be that, non-partisanship, whereby they should come together and vote on issues for the Ghanaians, not because they should to support the executive.
And it actually goes to buttress another point that yes, this parliament, or the Parliament of Ghana, has been seen or described as a rubber stamp parliament, where the government of the day, no matter what they lay before the House, they know that the majority will have their way and the minority will just have their say, even if what the minority is saying makes sense. Has this 8th Parliament done well? This 8th Parliament, has it done well in addressing that situation of this, the Parliament of Ghana being seen as a rubber stamp parliament where the majority will always have their way?
Well, I think when you come to the previous Parliament before this one, I think you could say that, because the majority could just write through whatever they want and nothing can be done. But now with this hang parliament, I think it is making the ordinary Ghanaian to be able to be more informed about some of the issues and partake in the governance. So it is a 50-50 split from my view. Yes, there are some issues that they become a rebel stamp parliament, and that speaks to the issue of corruption. And I think it's very important, because money politics are taking shape, whereby some of these parliamentarians from the opposition could be bought.
That's a critical point. I mean, talking about the influence of money and how that can also, or that has weakened Parliament's strength and oversight role. Yes. For the likes of the majority leader, he thinks that there should be a consideration for more powers for the legislative arm of government. He's called for a constitutional review to give more powers to Parliament to bite. Is that what is needed?
Yes, I think there needs to be a constitutional review, and I've said it many times. Our current constitution has done its part. We need to move on. I don't see why the president will have so much power under the current constitution. So I do agree on that point with the speaker. But I think at the end of the day, with anything in life, it needs to be reviewed, and things that have changed should be replaced. And I think it's important if we want our democracy to be able to deliver development. And I think, yes, it is important for those things to happen. For example, if you take some of the state-owned enterprises, who appoints the CEO? Who appoints the chairperson? Who appoints some of the board members? So who is going to be a check on each of them. Is there any wonder, therefore, that most of the SOEs are not doing very well? So I agree with the Speaker of Parliament on that.
Well, that's actually the majority leader in Parliament who made this point. But you see, if Parliament
he made the point that
there should be a review. Yes, there should be a constitutional review to give.
No, he's not the only one who made the point about the review of the Constitution. A lot of people have made the point, including academics and others.
Indeed, and including yourself
yes.
As well. But
yes.
You see, even if Parliament, the Constitution is reviewed and Parliament is given more powers, and certain elements which you have just touched on, the influence of money on the behavior of members of Parliament and their decision, and then also the influence of their political parties on the decision they make in Parliament, as against the position of their constituents, no matter the number of powers they are giving, it's not going to do much good if these things are also not brought into consideration, is it not?
Well, I tend to differ. For example, when you talk about constitutional review, you're also looking at the whole notion of how our elections are going to be financed. In developed countries like the United States, most of these people are financed by the federal government. And so I think just the review alone doesn't have to do with just the way things are structured to give them more power. It's not just about more power. It's about strategically how the Constitution would deliver on development. And I think at this particular point, stakeholders, including the youth and others, need to have a say. And I think these are the things that would help us advance. Now, yes, corruption, you can never get rid of corruption in any country, but you need to minimize it and make sure that those who get on that path are punished. Right now, there are a lot of people that have undertaken things that are not right, and they are not punished. They need to be punished and punished vigorously so that it becomes a deterrent for others.
Professor David Abdullahi, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Sharing your thoughts on us on this one. Professor David Abdullahi is a senior governance advisor, the African Parliamentary Network, on Parliament's 30 years in existence. What's your thought? What's been the impact of Parliament on our democracy as a country? Share with us. We're live on Facebook, 3FM 927. When you go onto Facebook right now, you'll get to see some of the pictures and videos of what happened in Parliament earlier today, the speeches that were given or presented by both the majority and the minority leaders in Parliament on their position of the influence and impact of Parliament on our democracy over the period. Now, for the majority leader, Osei Mensah Bonsu, he is stressing the point that there's a need for a constitutional review to give Parliament a lot more powers to ensure the protection of the public purse, especially. Take a listen to him.
The constitutional order that will mitigate the winner takes all and prevent the do or die combat associated with our elections. We need a new constitutional order that will prevent the constant increase in the number of seats in Parliament. We need a new constitutional order that will put a cap in the number of ministers of state. A new order that will ensure that the Speaker of Parliament is a serving member of Parliament and that the Parliament of Ghana does not remain as one of only 9 parliaments in the world whose speakers are not members of Parliament. We need a new constitutional order that will accord Parliament the financial independence that is required to enable Parliament to stand on its own feet. A new constitutional arrangement that will liberate Parliament to perform its legislative functions without impediments, intended or unintended. The Speaker, we need a new constitutional order that will give birth to an economic paradigm which will engender wealth creation, entrepreneurial spirit, and talent development, as well as jobs for our people, especially the youth, with the active partnership of Parliament. A new constitutional order that would remodel the composition of the NDPC, the National Development Planning Commission, to purge it of the overly partisan coloration and populate it with neutral citizens who develop a real long-term national development plan around which the parties would extract their manifestos and therefore ensure that succeeding administrations continue the programs and projects started by their predecessors in order to prevent the wanton dissipation of the scanty resources of this country.
That's the majority leader, Osei Mensah Bonsu. Then, as to stay in Parliament, the minority in Parliament is urging the Deputy Majority Leader, Alexander Ocansey, to apologize to the minority group over his comments on their decision not to approve ministerial nominees. A Deputy Minority Leader, Emmanuel Kofi, speaking to journalists, said the minority caucus will stop working with Alexander Ocansey if he does not apologize and proceeds on the tangent of insulting members of the minority group. And they're urging him that he should apologize so they can move on, because clearly the focus basically is fighting for the people of Ghana. Mr. Kofi comments comes after the Deputy Majority Leader, Alexander Ocansey, described as political immaturity the position of the minority not to approve any of the ministerial nominees of government who have gone through the vetting that ended yesterday. So that's what's happened now, and that's the position on the minority's case with respect to Alexander Ocansey and his description of their decision. Away from that, the National Petroleum Authority has vowed to deal with oil marketing companies that sell products supplied through the government's Gold for Oil program at high prices. In fact, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Petroleum Authority, Mustafa Abdul Hamid, said the objective of the program is to offer some relief to consumers at the pumps. Therefore, oil marketing companies that want to benefit from the program should be aligned. He spoke at a news conference a while ago to announce the arrival of new consignment of petrol and diesel under the Gold for Oil program. Let's take a listen to Dr. Mustafa Hamid of the National Petroleum Authority, and we'll engage and expect in the oil and gas sectors shortly about this objective.
Ghana has received its second consignment of petroleum products under the Gold for Oil program. 40,000 metric tons of diesel and 35,000 metric tons of petrol at a cost of $40 million. Although Dr. Hamid agrees that the received volume is inadequate to meet the country's demand, he explains that the decision is to limit the product to bigger OMCs, which will ensure that consumers benefit from lower pricing of fuel.
In this second consignment of Gold for Oil products that have come, we are going to sell only to OMCs with not less than 45 outlets. You see, because if you are, our local people call something soppy. There are 150 oil marketing companies. If you are selling soppy to all the 150 companies, you will not realize the impact. But if you are selling to the people with the highest number of outlets, then its effect will be felt across the country in terms of the price reduction.
But oil marketing companies have raised concerns about the mechanism in distributing the petroleum products under the Gold for Oil program. A recent statement emphatically stated that mechanisms created an uneven playing field and a distortion on the market. However, officials of the National Petroleum Authority failed to provide an answer when the media raised the issue at the media briefing.
So that's Dr. Mustafa Hamid. He heads the National Petroleum Authority on this matter. And in fact, a number of you have been asking same questions about the quantum of impact that this Gold for Oil program is having on the prices at the pumps. As we speak, we're talking about fuel selling at just a little over 14 cedis per liter, and diesel just a little over 15 cedis per liter, depending on the oil marketing company that you're buying from. That has raised fundamental concerns and questions about the specific impact that this Gold for Oil program is having on the Ghanaian consumer, especially, and what we should be looking out for, taking into consideration the fact that it is our money that is being used to pay for this gold for this oil that is coming under this program. Now, we have some experts sharing their views on this and what we should be expecting and going forward, and why there's a lot more questions, especially on the part of government, to answer as to when we can measure the exact and specific impact of this Gold for Oil program on the consuming public. Stay with us here on Hot Edition. We'll get back to that when Nana Mwesi VII joins us. He's the Executive Director of the Institute of Energy Security. But the opposition National Democratic Congress has opened nominations for election of its presidential candidate and parliamentary candidate for the 2024 general elections. It follows what has been reorganization process by the party towards its bid to win the 2024 general elections, with new set of national executives elected as well. Already, the presidential race for the party is picking up heat, with former President John Dramani Mahama picking his nomination forms earlier today. A team led by Professor Joshua Alabi was at the party office to pick up nominations for John Dramani Mahama earlier today, and the information that we picked up not too long ago is that he has already begun the process in filling the forms. Now, here's what Professor Joshua Alabi had to say when he picked the forms for and on behalf of John Mahama earlier today. I want to take a listen to him, and we'll get into some analysis shortly.
And if leadership comes, then experience is the key. One who has done it before, and one who is very humble, one who shows love to the people, and one who believes in people-centered policies. I'm very confident that come 2024 December, January 2025, NDC will be forming the new government under the leadership of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. The NDC has done it before, and the NDC have left very experienced hands to assist His Excellency John Dramani Mahama to do it again. Somewhere in the 80s, when it was very difficult for this country, it was the experienced hands of people from the NDC who were able to move the country from a very, very challenging moment to prosperity. Again, we have a similar challenge. We have the experienced hands, and they are all available and ready to support His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. I assure the people of this country that under the leadership of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, within a matter of 2 years, you'll see signs of development.
So that's Professor Joshua Alabi, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies in Accra, who himself, ahead of the 2020 elections, actually contested for the flag bearership with John Mahama. At the time, he polled just a little over 3,000 votes. And then also we had the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament at the time, Alban Bagbin, as well, following with some 2,313 votes. And then Gusitano followed with a little over 2,000 votes, and former Trade and Industry Minister Dr. Kospu Gabra as well, placing fourth at the time with a little over 1,400 votes. Now, here's what's happened. We have the likes of the former mayor of Kumasi, Kojo Bonsu, whom we understand also picked his forms earlier today. And then we're expecting, according to information from the NDC's headquarters, that Dr. Kwabena Dufo will pick tomorrow as well. So it's something that we're keeping a close eye on. But there's another entrant, a new entrant into the race for the flag bearership of the NDC. We have Ernest Krobia, who has been described as a businessman. That's all we know about him for now. But look, he's joined us on the telephone. Let's just connect with him now. Mr. Ernest Krobia, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Until today, you were not mentioned, and then we hear about you picking the nominations forms today. Who is Mr. Ernest Krobia?
Mr. Ernest Krobia is from Ashanti Mampong, and he's always based in Accra, Weja. And Jesus is my savior, is my branch. And I'm a businessman in and out in the UK and other European countries as well.
And how long have you been a member of the NDC?
It's a long time. And I'm a party card holder.
I see. And prior to now, what exactly have you done in terms of your influence, contribution, and impact in the NDC?
I done a lot in my constituency, and also I done a lot all over the Ghana to support my brother, chairman, and etc. in various places in Ghana. But I'm a someone behind the scene, and always I'm a quiet person. So if you say that you never hear Ernest Kobia before, you are right. But I have come out today to make my intention everyone to know that we can able to build a new Ghana and lift NDC up so we can save Ghana from the mess we are in today. Jesus is my savior branch.
Wager, Jesus is my savior branch of NDC. That's what you are a member of.
Yeah.
I see. And so you say you're the best bet for the NDC to win 2024?
Yeah, but as you know, NDC is a political party. We believe in democracy, and we make this democracy work in this country. So today, if you are not surprised, we brought a young man to pick the forms, which is we did well. So we're going to go to the contest, and whoever win, we all put our people to have a proper freedom and proper financial increment and etc. So we can get better education, better houses, better environment, and also etc. a lot.
This economic crisis we find ourselves in, what are you going to do to turn around the fortunes of Ghana?
As a leader, I will leave that one on my team to decide. So if you have a time, I can make arrangement for you to speak to my financial advisor, and he will brief you with that, which is we are well prepared for that.
No, I'm asking you, as you're putting yourself up as flag bearer aspirant. Hopefully, if you are approved by the party and you get everybody and you fulfill the requirements, you want me to speak to your financial secretary to tell me how you are going to turn around the fortunes of this country?
You know, as a cabinet, I have all the answers, if you don't mind.
No, but you are the leader. The buck stops with